if we ever got a Saints Row 6, I think they should abandon the Santa Alesso story. I liked the map, but the story, with Eli and Kevin, that's got to go. So what do? You reboot the franchise again. Now you've got two choices. You can soft reboot the franchise, and here's how I would do that. So a soft reboot would essentially be like Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens, where you acknowledge the old games, but it's a new story. And how this would work is that Saints Row 1 and 2 was set in the real world. Saints Row 3 was a movie, like a silly blockbuster. Saints Row 4 was a video game. And since then, the Saints Row name has become a bit of a joke. And now, years later, everyone has forgotten about the Saints and they've become a laughingstock. And they don't mean anything anymore. So now you've got to rebuild the image, reputation of the Saints from scratch. And it's set in Stillwater, but now like it's bigger than ever before. Like the countryside is available to explore, and maybe we could incorporate Steelport and see what Steelport would look like if it was in a realistic game. And you could also see like movie images of the third games. You could go to cinema and watch cutscenes of the third game as a movie. You could even buy Saints Row 4 as a video game and play it in your crib. That would be a really funny, cool idea that still acknowledges those silly games but says this is a realistic take now. So that's what I think they should do. Instead of just remaking the first game, like rehash the first game where it's kind of the same thing again, where you're rebuilding the Saints, but it acknowledges the old games as well. Now, my second idea for a reboot would be, and this is a complete reboot, is set it in England with a whole new cast of Saints. So kind of like what they did with the fifth game anyway. But this would be about football hooligans. So imagine a movie Green Street, but it's about a bunch of football hooligans who support the football team, the Saints, and they wear the purple football shirts and the scarves and everything. And you've got to fight basically other British gangs. So you've got Roadmen, Chavs, and then like the Cray Twins style mafia. And they're like the different gangs you got to fight. And it would essentially be like a British version of the original two games. Now, a lot of people might not like that idea because it's going to be a different vibe than like the gangster LA theme of the first two. But I think that could work. And as a British guy, I think that would be a fun game. Even without the Saints Row title, it would just be a cool sort of a British crime game that I think should definitely be a thing. Now, the third idea is actually a sequel to Saints Row 4, where you go full on wacky, but make it more dramatic. And how I would do this is that Earth has been destroyed and the Saints go to Mars. Now, why I say Mars is because you've got the video game Red Faction. So you could do a tie-in with Red Faction, which was also by Volition, and Ultor were a thing in that game. Now, in Red Faction Guerrilla, Earth still exists, so it's not the same. But, if you do mental gymnastics, you could say that, like, Saints Row 5 is a tie-in to Red Faction 3. So it'll be Red Faction 3 and Saints Row 5 sort of combined, like a crossover game. And then basically how this would work is that Mars City is a thing and you've got to like take over Mars City as the new Saints, and it's a wacky game set in space, sci-fi, so they go all the way out, nonsense, craziness. Or they could make it like Red Faction, which was actually kind of a serious game despite being on Mars. So like basically Red Faction 3 with Saints Row could be a thing. I think one more idea I had was that what if Earth wasn't entirely destroyed and now it's like a post-apocalyptic Earth and all these like post-apocalyptic gangs like Mad Max, and maybe the government are trying to reclaim the Earth, and the Saints are now this like sort of rebel resistance like Star Wars that are trying to stop the oppressive sort of forces and the raiders. So it's like a post-apocalyptic version of Saints Row, and it could be a gritty game as well.